tuning in to Vantage Point PRU. My name is Cynthia Ng and this is Nadia Azmi. And with general elections closing in, we want to find out from young Malaysians how do they foresee the country, say in about 8 years when we reach 2020 to become a high-income nation, and what are some of the issues that they are most concerned about. But before we begin the show, firstly I want to say a big thank you to the Warehouse, which is hosting us today at this beautiful little cafe right at the heart of KL in Chinatown. I would like to go to my guests because the topic for today is education, and each of them, some way or another, they are doing something to transform the country, to help improve the lives of young children and young people through education. And on my right, I have Zamir Zulkifli. He is the co-founder and managing executive director for Teach from Malaysia, an independent organization dedicated to ending education inequality in Malaysia by getting top students to teach in high-need schools across the country. Next, we have Joyce Tagal, a senior analyst with the Performance Management and Delivery Unit, PERMANDU. She works on increasing children's access to basic education under the Education NKRA, which is under the Economic Transformation Program. And last but not least, I have Samuel Sila Matthew Unja. He is an aspiring teacher who just recently graduated from the Sultan Idris University of Education, or UPSI. I would like to go to Joyce first because she works with PERMANDU, right? And we have, like I said, about 8 years to become a high-income nation, and the government has set various initiatives under the Education NKRA. I would like to try to understand the current state of education in our country. What are our goals under the Education NKRA, and how far have we achieved those goals so far?
Okay, thanks, Cynthia. So firstly, let me clarify. PERMANDU actually has two major programs. The first is the Government Transformation Program, and the second is the Economic Transformation Program. The NKRA that I work in, the Education NKRA, falls under the Government Transformation Program. So the Education NKRA is really aiming to reduce inequity in basic education. So really aiming to increase access for all children in Malaysia to getting a good basic education, whether it's at preschool, primary or secondary level. Then you have the Education NKEA, which is a separate program under the Economic Transformation Program, and that's really aimed at getting more private sector participation in education in Malaysia. So not just at secondary and primary school level, but also at the tertiary level. So under the NKRA, which I work in, that's really, we have five major prongs. The first thing is actually preschools. So we expand preschools across the country by getting more participation from government as well as private sectors providers. The second is literacy and numeracy. So that the aim is to really get all primary 3 children completely literate and numerate by linear standards by the time they reach primary 3. The third one is high-performing schools, and that's really setting the bar high for excellent schools in the country. So we have over 52 schools right now that have been awarded the high-performing school status. And then the last one is the New Deals, which is basically a performance management system for teachers, really to get principals and teachers the incentive to keep performing and to perform well in the system. On top of that, we also have this thing called the School Improvement Program, which supports all of these initiatives together by really getting all schools the support that they need to excel.
What are some of the key challenges in your work at the moment in terms of the education?
Challenges, I think there are mostly systemic challenges, I would say. So for example, the first one is that Malaysia is extremely large in terms of access. So we have a big gap, we have a big spectrum of students that we're catering to. So you have the sort of rural, small town, kampong child, and you also have urban kids in PJ, in KL, who are performing extremely well. So the biggest challenge to us in PERMANDU as well as the Ministry of Education is how to fill in the gap as well as to manage the entire spectrum without compromising on excellence for either side.
I think this is where Zamir comes in, for Teach from Malaysia. I think that's one of your main objectives, to fill in this gap, to look at the disparity between the rural and the urban areas in terms of education. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about Teach from Malaysia.
Sure. First of all, I want to say thanks for inviting me. And for Teach from Malaysia, we have it a bit easier compared to PERMANDU. So PERMANDU is looking at the whole system, but we're just focusing on one specific area in education. That's the quality of the teacher in the classroom. Okay. And we don't see the divide between urban and rural, but for us, education equity is really coming from an income divide between the high-income households and the low-income households. And Teach Malaysia aims to increase, and how we define the problem, first of all, is education inequity. Joyce touched on it for a bit.
Yeah.
In Teach Manager's context, education inequity is defined as the challenge that a child's background or origins often determines his outcome in life.
Okay.
So very rightfully so, a child born in Damansara is very different growing up from a child in Puchong, from Kuala Selangor, all the way to rural Sabah, Sarawak. So what we want to do is like break that, so that you can, by the child's future, the way he speaks, you can't tell where he comes from, but you know it's a product of the Malaysian education system. Our challenge is so what we hope to do is like really recruit top graduates, anyone and everyone that has graduated from any degree, but at the top of their game. So top lawyers, engineers, accountants.
Yeah.
I understand you're a lawyer as well, so right?
An aspiring lawyer.
An ex-aspiring lawyer.
Yeah.
So that the fact that you've already like moved on to a different sector means like, and what we want to do instead is that all these passionate leaders in various fields to give 2 years of their lives to teach the kids.
It's very interesting because how do you get these graduates, some of them are from top universities, to give up a possible high-flying, lucrative job at a multinational to join Teach for Malaysia for 2 years and serve in a high-need school?
Okay, so first of all, we don't ask them to give it up. Yeah. So we change it around, we say invest 2 years of your life.
Okay.
Because, right, and we believe that a teacher in the schools, and please correct me, Sam, if I'm wrong, right, but the skills as a teacher is very diverse. You have to be able to stand, plan in front of the classroom, act on your feet, be able to make various decisions split second, and then inspire and motivate kids that don't want to be there. Now compare that to a CEO of an organization of 40 or 40,000, the challenges are exactly the same. So the skills that you need to be a transformational teacher in the classroom is exactly the same skills that you need to be a transformational leader.
Okay. So
That's the hook.
Okay.
The hook is like, hey, make a difference and learn a lot at the same time.
Teaching has been seen as a less prestigious, or it's not even a sought-after profession anymore in Malaysia, at least. And I'd like to go to Samuel because you are an aspiring teacher. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, to add on, like this teaching profession, you know, you studied to become a teacher. You were trained with the skills on how to be in the classroom, how to interact with students and all that. But do you think that the quality of education in this country, is it deteriorating in terms of teaching quality and all that? How do you and your peers from UPSI who are trained to become teachers, do they see this teaching profession as something noble, as something sacred? So what's your view on that?
First of all, thank you because you invite me for the second time. From our view, since we are going to UPSI, we are become a teacher. And we are trained to be a teacher from the first day we are there.
Yes.
During our orientation, our vice chancellor will not call us just like our name. We have a special name, Cikgu. We are called Cikgu there. That is the first training that we have. And then from our view now, our education system have lots of problems. Instead, because we can see in the school, the student now is different than the other students.
So these problems occur after you have graduated and you're actually in the schools teaching and
in school during our practical.
Okay.
I will have to go for the first commercial break, but when we come back, we could continue with Samuel on some of the challenges to become a teacher nowadays. We'll go for the first break, and we'll see you shortly. Hi, welcome back. And before the break, we were talking to Samuel about the challenges of becoming a teacher. What are your concerns, and what kind of support do you need?
The support that we need to do this thing is what we want to against these problems. Actually, what we learn in university is so different with the practical, because the new system, the system that we have now, is very lax. Instead, I think Dr. Mandu can take an action, so can advise the higher education ministry, because we are just only get one practical only. Actually, to be a good teachers, to against this problem.
The training module in schools that teach students to become teachers needs to be improved.
To be improved.
For them to be able to face the teaching world later on.
Yes.
How long is your practical for?
3 months only, and we need more than that. Like just when we look about during 1970, 1980, they are just they going to school often. They are not just like us. In the end of our semester, we are going to practical. It's
What
not
about posting?
pragmatic. Huh?
After you have graduated, you will have to wait a certain amount of period to be posted, to be assigned to a certain school and all that. How is the process like?
That's the big problem in the UPSI now. We have to wait a long time, around 7 or 8 months.
I believe also not just UPSI, all the other schools also in Malaysia, universities in Malaysia.
It's a big issue now. But to process it, we need to interview again. And then now it's not KPM. We have SPP, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Pendidikan.
Okay.
We are directly with that SPP now.
So you interview with them to become full-fledged teachers, and that takes a long time sometimes.
Take a long time.
Okay.
Maybe I can respond to that a little bit.
Yeah.
So under this year, actually, Pemandu has recently started 15 new initiatives aimed at improving teacher quality. So one of them is actually increasing the amount of practicum, not just in IPG but also in IPTAs. So that's something that we really have to look into. And the placement, you're absolutely correct. There is a big mismatch in the vacancies in schools and the sort of teaching workforce and where they should be placed. Right now there seems to be a lack of communication, so what we really are trying to do is to bridge all of the different agencies and Suruhanjaya as well as the different ministries together, and I think hopefully that's something that we can resolve this year or next year.
Okay, I want to bring discussion to a problem that Malaysia faces, which is brain drain, retaining our high-skilled workers, our best talents. And there are about 70,000 young Malaysians studying abroad at the moment. And because Joyce, you graduated from Yale for your degree, and you decided to come home and serve the country. I'm sure given, yes, the pay is definitely better working abroad, but surely there are some other reasons that makes you want to come home and serve the country.
I read in a recent interview that one of the reasons you came back was because of the 2008 elections. So, now with the election coming out of all that, maybe you could elaborate on that?
Yeah, correct. So when I graduated, the year before that was 2008, so that was the March 13 elections. And I think that was actually a very groundbreaking experience for many young Malaysians who are studying abroad. Not because we are partisan in any way, but I think what we really found exciting was that people could have more free speech, that people were making choices based on things that they had read, not just in the newspapers but also on the internet, that there was more discussion going on. I was actually part of a group when I was at Yale called the Northeast Malaysian Forum, and that was a place where we gathered together and really talked about current affairs in Malaysia, and that was a platform for people who were overseas to keep in touch with what was going back home in Malaysia.
So why education? What do you think is the link between education and all these big changes happening in the country?
I think education is the most important thing. I think we can all say that. Even if we talk about, people complain about many things going on in the country, crime, corruption, everything. But if you look at it in a big picture, everything can be linked back to education. And I think that there are many things that we can do to improve the way we are learning. And this is something not just Malaysia is facing. I don't mean to talk about just Malaysia. Across the world, different countries, Zam and I were talking about it earlier, we're trying to tackle the same problems that Malaysia is facing. So...
Zamir?
Brain drain?
Yeah.
Or for my reason coming back?
Yes.
Okay. Mine was very personally driven. I just enjoy Malaysia. I don't see myself living anywhere else, and I'm very family orientated, so wanted to be close to the family.
Okay.
It's but education has always been something important that it wasn't a factor in coming back, but once I got back, I just naturally went to the education line.
So Teach for Malaysia has been launched for a month, quite a month now.
The first
so
fellows has just recently
and the students, the graduates, top graduates that you deal with, a lot of them, I'm sure there are a lot from overseas who graduated overseas. So how is their perception on, okay, fine, I'm coming back to Malaysia, I'm going to teach for 2 years. Is that what they really want, or do they foresee going back to going abroad after these 2 years to work?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And actually, in our cohort of 50 fellows that just started teaching in January, 40% actually are foreign graduates.
Okay.
And the other 60% either from local or private universities.
Right.
But it's a really even and split that's very diverse, and we really appreciate that. Among all of them, either local or foreign graduates, can and want to come back to make that difference in the country. They feel like...
So they do have that
yeah.
urge, you know, to do something for their country.
All the youth as well, especially I think in some of your college graduates, they feel like, wow, I want to make a difference, I want to do something.
Okay.
And they feel like maybe joining a normal company or immediately, or joining politics is not for them. And Teach Malaysia is an attractive opportunity in that sense. Among all the programs, we actually go directly to the ground and just help the kids. And that matters the most. And that's been a key decision for most people.
That's amazing.
Okay, I will need to go for the last commercial break, but when we come back, we would like to know what are your thoughts about transformation and changing the education system for the better. So we'll talk about it after the break. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back. And when we talk about education and quality of education, there is a perception that Malaysia's education standard is inferior to other countries. And then we also have this perception that public schools are inferior to private schools. And lastly, of recent years, more parents, especially Chinese and Indian families, are sending their kids to vernacular schools because there is a perception that there is a deteriorating standard in national schools. I would like to ask my three guests, what are your thoughts about this, and what kind of education do you want to see for your kids? Zamir.
Three questions that are tough. I'll take the first one.
Okay.
I'll leave the others to the other two.
Yeah, the quality of education.
The quality of education, yeah, in general, Malaysia, we are struggling. We're above average. We're not so far behind. But I hope by 2020 we can be the next South Korea or the next Finland. I think we have the talent in Malaysia. Yeah. We just have to be able to utilize it in the education space. You guys mentioned that it's how noble of a profession. Yes. That needs to be returned. That spirit that, hey, education and passing on civilization to the next generation should be everyone's responsibility. It shouldn't be like just the Ministry of Education, just the teachers, but parents, corporates should all get involved, and Teach Malaysia wants to play a part in encouraging that. How we go there is a bigger question, but I believe that the first step we have to do that is get the right talent first.
Cynthia mentioned, about the Malaysian education system being inferior to those in other countries. So I'm just going to throw in a few examples from my experience, because I did go to school in the States, in elementary school, or what we say here is primary school. And I was shocked to find that the system here, we are ranked in our class, from number 1 to number 40, depending on how many students are in the classroom. And I don't know, Joyce, do you think in some way that's kind of labeling the children as, okay, you're smart and you're less smarter? What do you think of that current system? And not only that, our classes are relatively big, 40 students in one classroom, whereas in the States, we had only maximum 20 students or even less. So the teachers could place more attention and focus on each of the students and be able to identify their weaknesses and all that. So with the current system that we have in Malaysia, what is your take on that?
Right. Well, to be honest, I don't think any country has figured out the recipe, the recipe to success in education. And I think Malaysia, we are definitely not far behind many other countries, but we can improve in many ways. So for example, what you talked about, the ranking. Ranking is not necessarily a bad thing because it allows teachers to identify weaker students, but the most important thing is that the ranking actually helps teachers to provide more support for those weaker students and help them to get up to par with the rest of their classmates.
Do you think it pushes the students as well to work harder?
I think it does. I was definitely pushed harder because of a ranking. But I do think that the importance is really to have the support system there to, like Zam was saying, to provide for the weaker students and to make sure that they're not left behind. And I think, like Zam was saying, Pemandu is working very well with the Ministry of Education, and I think MOE is really out there and they really want to make a change. But it's really important for parents, teachers and students especially to embrace this change and to work together with the ministry.
What about creativity in the classroom? Do you think creativity is being injected into the classrooms today? Or are we too textbook oriented, too exam oriented?
If you actually look at the syllabus that we have in Malaysia, there is a lot of room for creative and critical thinking. However, I think the real issue is how is the syllabus being taught. what are the actual things that are being pushed in classrooms. And I would say that because of the lack of time for many teachers, they push to teaching the test rather than teaching the actual syllabus. Our syllabus is actually pretty good.
Training for teacher itself is as equally as important. I mean, to train teachers, because obviously you have to have good teachers and then you have, I mean, good students. Samuel.
For me, I agree with Joyce. The rank is important because you want to make a good student, a competitive student, and then to pressure the student is not a good idea, because if we see from the education theory also, we don't need to push, but we to encourage them.
Encouragement,
yes, because that's more better.
To inspire,
to inspire them. Because if you push, they will not to do.
So the environment is very
important, and the teachers. And I agree that the teachers must use the skill, the communication skill, and then alat bantu mengajar, the ABM, that who can interact the students.
Yeah.
Okay, as well. My earlier question was about parents nowadays. They prefer, especially Chinese and Indian parents, they prefer to send their kids to vernacular schools. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that the way forward is a one school system, or should we retain the current system that we have, Zamir?
I believe in choice, so you should be able to choose some. But there's this phrase instead, is the tyranny of all and the genius of N. Why can't we have everything at the same time? Why can't we make the national school systems as the centers of learning excellence and maintaining the heritage and culture of each different race, right? As well as having choices of purely Chinese or Indian vernacular schools. So I don't see why we have to choose, and I'll always encourage for both to happen. To ask, that doesn't really answer your question, so
basically, maybe what kind of approach, maybe what kind of system do you want to see?
I guess either whatever we choose, right? We've got to go back to what is the essence of education. What are we teaching the kids? Creativity that comes in, right? Or are we teaching them so that they're going to university, or do we want to teach them to be to find their inner strength and find their core purpose in life? So that's the big philosophy.
Parents should be given a choice, like Zamir said. In Pemandu, we work to really strengthening all sectors of the education system, not just one particular system. I think that getting to a national system would be a great thing in terms of standardizing quality across the different schools, but I don't think that necessarily means that we have to get rid of vernacular education. I think you can standardize in other ways.
Okay, Samuel.
For me, we give them a choice to choose where the which system they want, because to develop, but I'm more going to one system, because to make our country that we need the same system. That's something like the other countries who use it.
So education is could be a factor in drawing unity among students.
For example, sekolah wawasan.
Yes, sekolah
during
wawasan.
Chun Dr. Mahathir.
Okay. Right, that's all the time that we have for today, and I would like to thank the Warehouse again for hosting us at this beautiful cafe, and thank you to all my three guests.
Thank you.
We'll see you again on the next episode of Vantage Point PRU.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.